At this time, I shall invite, before I do that, just a small aside. We should try our best to be quiet when the speaker, any speaker, whether it's the speaker or somebody else is at the lectern speaking, so there's no distraction of sounds from the audience. I know our next speaker needs to prepare his morning beverage, so I will pause a minute for him to take care of that. I guess he needs to start the video machine too.
Already did.
Already did. Well, with that, we get this all recorded for posterity. Our second speaker, Ken Smith, has been techno challenged for the past 5 weeks. Here to entertain us with his successes, failures, and the wisdom he has gained, please help me welcome Ken Smith with the speech entitled, "It Sometimes Doesn't Help to Kick It." It sometimes doesn't help to kick it, Ken Smith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, our most welcome guest and returned member. Thank you for being here, Lee. When I was a teenager, I was really into cars. And I was given, I don't recall if it was a birthday present or a Christmas present, the Visible V8. I don't know if any of you ever ran across it. I don't think they even exist anymore. But it was a wonderful project. It was a complete V8 engine that you assembled, but it was all plastic so that you could see the moving parts once it was done. So I learned, actually, on that, how an internal combustion engine works, and I really got into taking care of my own vehicles. I had a hopped up 55 Chevy, put an Edelbrock manifold on it, and dual Holley carburetors, and all kinds of really nice things. But a mechanic friend of mine taught me how to properly repair a car. And that is, if something's not working, get a hammer and hit it. If that doesn't work, get a bigger hammer. If that fails, then you got to go through the process of actually taking it apart and fixing what's wrong. But it very often did fix it. There are things that just get loose, and you can kind of tighten them up with a hammer. And I've kind of carried this throughout my life. And unfortunately, I apply it to things like computers today. My first computer I got in 1981. It was 82, I take that back. And it was, the processor was a CPM 86. Any of you have even heard of that? IBM also marketed the same computer and called it DOS, DOS, Disk Operating System. And that's because before that, all of the computers ran on cassette tapes. You actually had a cassette player, and you plugged a cassette tape in, and it would run a computer program for you. And then you could record your data on that as well. And the DOS system did the same thing, but on 5 1/4-inch floppy disks, and they were floppy at that point. So I learned a little bit about DOS. I learned a lot about DOS back then, and I still retain a lot of it, which came into benefit for me this past 5 weeks. Because on January 15th, I took the club's video camera home, uploaded the videos to my computer, and then started uploading them to YouTube. And I had to leave because that ties up most of the resources of the computer when I do that. And when I came back, the bleeded blue screen was on my computer. If you have Macs, you probably don't understand what this is. But a blue screen is something that strikes fear in the heart of even technophiles, even geeks, when they see that blue screen. This is what my blue screen said. It started, "A problem has been detected, and Windows has been shut down to prevent damage to your computer." Well, isn't that kind of a duh? I mean, isn't the computer damaged? If that screen is there, there's something wrong, obviously. And it continues, if this is the first time you've seen this stop error screen, restart your computer. Okay, so I kicked it first. That usually works, right? And so then I restart it. The same blue screen pops up. Ah, now it's not the first time. So I have to go through it. If this screen appears again, follow these steps. Check for viruses on your computer. Well, I can't start the computer. How do I run a virus program? I do have one on a disk, in fact, but it only works when the computer's started. It doesn't have a boot sector in it. I can't start the computer with that disk, so I can't check for viruses. I kick it again. Try it again. Blue screen comes back up. Next, remove any newly installed hard drives or hard drive controllers. Well, that one's easy. I haven't installed any new hard drives or hard drive controllers. So I can skip that check. Check your hard drive to make sure it is properly configured and terminated. Well, it is terminated. Isn't that what stop means? It won't run? And how am I going to check it? Do you take it out and examine it? Well, I did open it up and see if there were loose wires, but that didn't help. Run chkdsk/f to check for hard drive corruption and then restart your computer. Well, check disk is a DOS function that I am familiar with. Again, though, how do I run it if the computer won't start? So I dig through my boxes and I find the operating system disk. It's supposed to be used. And I put that in the drive, the floppy disk drive, and then I have to try to remember. Now, how do I get that? Well, when you start up the computer, it reads through a bunch of stuff as it's seeing what hardware you have before it tries to go to Windows. And one of the options is, it says delete for BIOS setup. So I tried that first. I tried changing BIOS, and I was able to get to the floppy, the CD drive as the startup mechanism. And then I try to read the computer, and even though it did see the drive when it was going through its hardware checking, once I try to log to it, it still won't run, and I get the blue screen again. So I tried that several times, and then another option, the faster way to get to it, is press F12 and you get to a boot menu, and that is what lets me select what to boot from rather than going through the BIOS and trying to change it. So fine, I try rebooting, and then I remembered some commands. Fix boot, there's one. And so I ran that on the C drive, and it did let me then see the C drive. But I tried booting from it, and I still got that blue screen. Didn't look like anything was going to work. I called one of my computer geek friends, and somebody that actually makes a living at this, and he said, the only thing I can recommend at this point is buy a new hard drive and configure it. Well, I'm going to lose a lot of data if I do that. I mean, I've got 0.5 terabyte of data on that hard drive. It's a 500 gigabyte drive. I do use Carbonite as a backup system, but you won't believe how slow it takes. It takes weeks and weeks to download your stuff. It's still downloading. It takes forever. So that's not the best method that I would recommend. Anyway, I finally do go out and buy a hard drive, stick it in, and go through and format it and install the operating system and boot up to it. And then I've got no way to communicate with anything because the operating disk does not include any of your drivers. Well, I need a driver to get to the internet. So how do I go to the internet and get a driver? I finally have to call AT&T technical support, and they say, well, we can't really help you unless you go to the people who can actually tie into your computer, and that'll cost you $15 a month for a minimum of 12 months. But then you get unlimited use of them. All right, so I agree to add that to my bill. They help me they have to look at our Linda's computer to see how it's configured because they're tied together, and that doesn't work because I have a different motherboard than her. So I read off the motherboard, they go find the driver, download it to her computer, and then I can copy it onto a flash drive and plug it in and get it on my computer, and then I can get to the internet. But our computers don't communicate. Two of the printers are on my computer, one of the printers is on hers. She can't communicate to get to my printers, and she needs that for her work. So back to my geek friend, he bills me 2 hours worth of consulting that does no good at all. And I go back to AT&T, and they finally discover that somehow her computer now switched to DMZ mode, whatever the heck that is, and therefore it has a totally different IP than mine, and they can't then network together. So they go through and fix that for her. We can now communicate, and I've been downloading everything off my old drive onto this until that drive crashed forever. And here I am, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Well, there is always a silver lining to every tragedy. Ken had the topic for a great